Good morning, this is Firefly reporting from Orote Airfield on our new multiplayer server of the virtual CTF-58, where we fly training missions in preparation for future campaigns and video sessions where we want to relive historic missions flown by US pilots, their Corsairs. One of the basic skills that we are learning and practicing is the dead reckoning and navigation. That was a mainstay of navigation for the pilots of all nations in World War II, where you basically tracked your airspeed, your altitude, your time, and your heading until you reached a given point or a pre-planned point where you wanted to go on your mission. Today, on today's flight in this video, I do not want to go into detail of how this method works and how it is done, but show you more how we use it in our squadrons, on our server, how to plan a mission for that reckoning, and then how to fly this mission. So please follow me to the planning tent so I can show you how to set up the flight plan for a dead reckoning flight. So see you there. Whenever you are starting to plan a flight, you most often start with a map showing where you come from, in this case Orote Airfield here on the map, and of course you should see on the map your destination where you want to arrive after a certain time. And the first thing is that you measure distance and the course, the direction from A to B on this map. So here we have the first flight leg from Orote Airfield to Nav Checkpoint 1. You can use the in-game measurement tool. You can see it already here, but in every flight simulator you have some kind of measuring tool that shows you the direction here and the distance. It makes sense to note this down. So in this case, our first flight leg is at a course of 339 degrees. We have to discern between magnetic and true heading and course. So we measure the true course, and the distance here is close to 50 nautical miles. Our flight also extends then to navigation checkpoint 2 and then back to Orote. So we have these three flight legs, and you can write this down in a table in analog form on paper, or I like to use PowerPoint for this. Gives me the option to use arrows and easily manipulate pictures, add text, etc. The considerations also are, why am I doing this? At what stage am I in my learning process? So just to make this short here, when you are new to dead reckoning flying, or our new squadron members on the multiplayer server, and then you should focus not so much on the planning process. This can be a bit overwhelming, but just get a flight plan from somebody and then fly the mission as the flight plan dictates. And once you are comfortable and familiar with how to fly a flight plan, then it makes sense to learn how to set up the flight plan. So this would be our aspiring section leaders. Whoever wants to go from squadron member to section leader should learn how to do that reckoning navigation also in the planning phase. And for everybody who is already familiar with this, should regularly repeat this and do it over again. Practice, essentially. Practice makes perfect. The next step In the planning after the map study would be consulting the mission briefing for the weather, especially the wind information. And for the dead reckoning method, what you need is your altitude. You have to decide what altitude are you flying, what is the wind there, and also the temperature is important, which is affecting your flight speed. So on our server, when you check the briefing, it says plus 20 degrees Celsius. Cloud cover is also important. You have to decide whether you want to fly below the clouds, above the clouds, or in the clouds even. So, and then you have to get the wind information for the desired altitude. So 6,000 feet, that would be here, 2,000 meters. The wind is 10 meters per second, that's 20 knots. I noted this down here. And the wind comes from 82 degrees and is blowing to 262 degrees. This would be our wind direction. And this helps because already when we look at the map, our first flight leg towards 331 degrees is in this direction. And the wind is hitting us from the left, from starboard, drifting the aircraft to the left, making it a bit faster maybe, judging by the direction. So this also affects our flight speed. And on our third leg, you can see that the wind is hitting the aircraft from the front on the left side, so we are slowing us down a bit and drifting us a bit to the right. And we have to compensate for this by adjusting our heading. So this is why it's important to get the wind information and also the altitude. Some other considerations: what speed do I want to use or fly at? I often, just in exercises like this, I just choose a nice cruise setting, which is fuel efficient. In the Corsair, we still have to figure this out, but what the tables say, at 2000 RPM, 34 or 30 inches of manifold, we get about 170 knots indicated airspeed. That's what you see on the gauge in the cockpit, resulting in about 190 knots true airspeed. Again, not going into detail here. This would be for anyone wanting to learn how to set this up today. We just note that we observe about 170 knots on our airspeed indicator in the cockpit. Fuel consumption: you can always fill up your aircraft, put on the external tanks, but it's not always needed. We want to fly as light as possible, but still with some reserve, that if we get in a fight or some other problems, that we still have enough fuel to go back. And again, with the new Corsair, we still don't know how much it's actually consuming, but I'm planning with about 100 gallons per hour, and so this, it's part of the considerations, 100 gallons per hour. So, and then also we are flying at 6,000 feet altitude, but we have to get there first. You can plan a climbing phase as a first flight leg, but I don't want to make it overly complicated today, so I'm just flying east of the airfield, climbing, and then come back to the airfield. And then I should be over the airfield at 6,000 feet, and that's where I start the first flight leg. I tested this yesterday, and this takes about 5 minutes before we actually embark on our journey. So these are some extra considerations before we start the actual planning. And then one more thing: the pilots in World War II did not have, not very often did they have the opportunity to get a fix on their position when they were started to fly. And after 15 minutes, they thought, am I still on course, etc. Usually they had to trust the method. They wanted to keep radio silence, so they just flew, and when the time was up, they were convinced, okay, I'm here somewhere, and I should start looking for whatever I'm looking for, or start going on to the next flight leg. So they accepted the uncertainty of where they actually were, and they trusted the method, and this is what we want to do. Of course, they did have sometimes they had the opportunity to just do a radio call to a radar station, okay, give me a fix on my position, and that would help them. Or yeah, by means of radio navigation, that was also possible, and it is possible in DCS, and we are also practicing this, but today we're just practicing the naked dead reckoning navigation. In DCS there's a hack. You can, by a certain keyboard combination, you can get a mark on the map during your flight at exactly the position where you are, and it's even showing the direction. But I recommend, and we recommend, you not using this hack in the flights on our multiplayer server, because we want to learn how it was done in World War II and not cheat our way through the mission. So it's possible, and when you are learning this in the early stages, of course, you can use this just to verify your position, but as fast as possible you should try to rely on the method and not do this kneeboard hack. So these are the initial considerations, and now we start setting up the actual flight plan. In order to make the flight plan, it is important to take all these numbers that we already talked about and translate them into the instrument readings in the cockpit. Now, what exactly are these? When we look at our cockpit in our Corsair, or any warbird for that matter, there are a number of instruments that are especially important for the navigation part, and it's basically these four. You need to stay at the same altitude. We are planning this flight for 6,000 feet, so we should always observe that we are more or less at 6,000 feet. Next thing is, of course, the airspeed. We are planning the flight for 170 knots indicated airspeed, so that should be somewhere here, our airspeed indicator. And it's especially important to try to stay as close as possible to the planned indicated airspeed. Then we have, of course, the compass. We will translate our true course into a compass heading or magnetic heading after wind correction, etc. And it's important to stay on this heading as good as possible, as close as possible. And our airspeed, or indicated airspeed, will be translated into ground speed, and with the ground speed we can translate how long it is going to take us to cover 550 nautical miles. So we should observe either a stopwatch or the takeoff time and then the end time for our flight legs. So these four numbers are important in the flight plan. Now let's calculate the flight plan. In order to do this, you have a couple of options how you want to do these calculations. You can do it the old school way with analog tools, just as the pilots in World War II did it, using circular slide rules called, and even back in those days they were called flight computers, like the Mark 8 flight computer here, or the Mark 3 plotting board. And if you own these, and also there are computer applications, software products for these, then you can use these. You can use all kinds of online tools, either emulating the analog tools like the flight computer, or you can use websites where you just type in the numbers from the briefing and from your map, and it also gives you the ground speed, the time, and the heading to take. All these methods can take a little bit of time and knowledge, of course, in order to set up a correct flight plan. And that's why I programmed another software tool, trying to make this, the time needed to make the flight plan as short as possible and as easy as possible. And you don't even need to know why you're doing all these things. But of course, it does help if you do. So, of course, we are today using this Dead Reckoning suite to calculate the flight plan. So let's go to the software, to the Dead Reckoning suite. You can download this from my website for free. I will put the download link in the description, and then you can check it out for yourself. So there's not much to this program. Manual settings are not even active yet. There are some credits, but the important thing is the flight planning part. So once you click on that, you have the choice of a couple of maps. And of course, we choose the Marianas today. And I don't want to go into lots of detail with the program here. The map basically is just there as a nice background, but of course you can zoom in and out to have a look at the map to get this nice background. You can use the aviation plotter to measure distances and even the course if you want, but I recommend to use the in-game measuring tools in DCS or Microsoft Flight Simulator or other flight simulators, because they are more correct in the game itself. The important thing here is this calculation tool. All the numbers you put in here, and when you hit the calculation buttons, that will lead to the flight plan, and this is what we are here for today. So let's go back to our briefing thing here. We look at the first flight leg, and the first important information is 50 nautical miles, 4339 true course. So that's the first thing you enter here, 15 nautical miles for 339 or at 339 degrees. So you can also, already you can see here in the flight plan, the distance is entered and the true course. You can enter also in the names here for where you're taking off from, though that would be Orote. And you see this is also entered in the flight plan. You need to put a space here, and we are going to nav 1. So this we have now in our flight plan. Okay, next it is asking for the temperature. This comes, of course, from our weather briefing. Temperature is plus 20 degrees Celsius. So we enter this in our tool. Then we enter the indicated airspeed. We already decided to fly at 170 knots. And you can see this is already here. There's a second field here where you can type in a number and then convert this to knots. And this is if you have an airplane like the P-47 where the airspeed indicator in the cockpit is in miles per hour, then you would need to convert this into knots. But since in the Corsair as a Navy plane, it's already showing the indicated airspeed in knots, you don't need to push this button. But you can, of course, enter the number here, and this number is entered in the flight plan, the indicated airspeed. And this number here, 170 knots, 170 knots is used for the calculation. So if you hit this button, then it sets this field here to exactly the same number as here. This is because in real aviation, the indicated airspeed is converted to a calibrated airspeed and to an equivalent airspeed, which depends on the aircraft type and yeah, some instrument specifics of how the airspeed is measured actually. I don't know exactly how this is done in DCS. My impression is that the indicated airspeed is just the same as the equivalent airspeed, but I might be wrong with that, but it checked out for the navigation. If yeah, you have any complaints with me doing this like this in DCS, then let me know. Then I would fix this in a future version of the program. Then we need to enter the altitude, of course. So it's 6,000 feet. And what this is doing now, when I push this button, it is calculating the temperature at 6,000 feet. This is important for the next step to calibrate to calculate the true airspeed. And you can see this already here in the flight plan. We are flying at 6,000 feet and the temperature is 8 degrees Celsius. The temperature itself you don't need during the flight, it's just important for this calculation. And if you hit now this button, the true airspeed, it is giving you the true airspeed, which is the speed at which the aircraft is flying through the air between the air molecules. Irrespective of the actual wind, it's just the propeller is pushing or pulling the aircraft through the air, and just exactly how fast it is doing that. This is this airspeed, the true airspeed. And you can see it's of course different from the indicated airspeed, and quite significantly so. The cockpit gauge, the airspeed indicator, is showing me 170 knots, but my airplane is at 6,000 feet and at 8 degrees Celsius. The aircraft is actually 188 knots fast through the air. And this airspeed is now used to calculate the wind correction. If my aircraft is drifted left or right, or with a headwind it is slowed down, or with a tailwind it is accelerated. So that's why we need this number, and just by the push of a button in the program you get the true airspeed. Now we have to enter the wind information from the briefing, and it was 20 knots from 82 degrees at this altitude. So the wind is coming from 82 degrees at 20 knots. And now if we push this button, we get the ground speed and the true heading. This is here. So now with the wind coming from this direction, you can see it is mostly coming from the right. You can see here I have to turn the aircraft right 6 degrees, adjust the heading 6 degrees to the right into the wind, because the wind is pushing my aircraft to the left. I have to compensate this by adjusting the heading 6 degrees to the right to compensate for this drift. And since the wind is coming a little bit from behind, it is even making the aircraft 4 knots faster. And with this correction, I am now, if we add these 6 degrees to the 339 degrees, we get 344 degrees. So there's a bit of rounding error, or no, maybe not error, but a bit of rounding involved here. So the true heading that I have to fly in order to stay on the course of 339 degrees is 344 degrees. And with this I can now calculate my flight time. It's 15.6 minutes to fly these 15 nautical miles. Again, this is showing up in the flight plan. And now one more thing. The true heading I cannot read from the compass, because the true heading, or even the true course, this is the direction relative to the geographic North Pole, to the meridians on the map. But the compass is showing the heading respective to the magnetic field of the Earth in this region and in this year that we are flying. The magnetic field of the Earth is moving all the time, slowly, but it's moving. So when you want to fly a certain heading, 3, 4, 4 degrees, you have to look up how much is the magnetic field of the Earth deviating from the true heading, from the true course. And this you can read from the maps. Here in the Dead Reckoning suite, I have marked this for the year 1944. You can see if you fly up here in the area of these islands up here in the north, then actually the magnetic variation is 0 degrees. That would mean our magnetic heading is just the same as the true heading. But since we are flying down here, where the magnetic variation is between +1 to the east and +2 to the east, we have to observe this and use this in our calculation. You can even see this in DCS. Let me show you quickly. Here we have the in-game F10 map, and there you have the compass rose. And it shows you the magnetic variation +1.2 degrees here west of Guam. And if we go north, it's becoming less. The number changes. Also here on the round dial, it would be changing. And if I fly to the east and to the south, the number is rising, the magnetic variation. You can set this in the emission editor. And it is, of course, that as the date is set to 1944 on our multiplayer server, then it's showing the correct magnetic variation for 1944. That's why we just add here the information. Sorry. The magnetic variation is to the east +1 degrees. And if we calculate this, it is subtracted from 344 degrees. So this is now the magnetic heading that we are setting on our compass dial. And now it shows up in the flight plan. We have everything in the flight plan now. And what I usually do is I just copy and paste the entire flight plan from the program, and copy it from the program and I paste it into PowerPoint. Now the important thing is just the first 3 columns, or if you want to include the time actually, like when you take off from the timepiece, the starting time and the end time, you could enter this here in PowerPoint also. If you just use a stopwatch, you only need the second column here, 15.5 minutes. And of course, the other thing that is important is the altitude, but since this is not changing in our flight, it's easy to keep track of the altitude. All the other numbers here are just for information if you are interested. For example, here you can see the wind is coming from the right, and I have to correct to the right. Also, of course, the checkpoints are important. Let's include these. So just this left part of the table is important. This is our first flight leg. We are flying 15.5 minutes at 343 degrees at an indicated airspeed of 170 knots at 6,000 feet altitude. So, and then we should have arrived over Nav1. And after we've done this, we proceed to the next waypoint. I just saw one thing here. And that is we are climbing for 5 minutes after takeoff, and only then are we starting to embark onto our first flight leg. So we have to add these 5 minutes to the flight plan, of course. Then the next flight leg is nav1 to nav2. This is also at 6,000 feet, but of course our course and the distance is different now, so it's 217 degrees. We go back to the planning tool, 217 degrees, and it was only 48 nautical miles. We change here nav1 to nav2. And now we just push the buttons again. So that's the interesting part here. So of course, temperature is the same, altitude the same. That means that true airspeed also stays the same. Wind is still coming from the same direction. But of course now, since the wind correction, etc., is different, we get a different ground speed. And the wind correction is, of course, different. And if we look at the map again, the wind is coming now from the left. We have to correct to the left, and the wind is coming more from behind than before. And that's actually making our plane a bit faster. The length of the flight leg is a little bit shorter, and since we are also faster, the flight time becomes less for this flight leg. Magnetic variation is still the same, and that's why we get our new heading here and the new flight plan for the second flight leg. And you see how fast this goes. We just enter a couple or update a couple of numbers, and finished is our flight plan. I just copy usually the little table here. Add this to our flight plan page, and that is it. And now from nav2 to nav3, our last flight leg. What is it? 100 degrees and 48 again. Again, true airspeed, etc. is all the same. But now the wind is coming from the front, so we have a lot of headwind slowing us down, and the wind is coming from the left, so we are expecting a slower ground speed, and again, correction to the left. Let's see how much. We are quite a bit slower now, 169 knots ground speed over the ground, and just a little bit of correction to the left. Time is 17 minutes now. And the magnetic heading is 97 for our compass reading. Again, let's just copy this. Add it to our flight plan. So this is basically it. Now, total time for our flight is 5 minutes plus 15.5, so that's 20.5 minutes. 30, 34.7, 44.7, 51.7 minutes, so let's say 52 minutes for our flight. And fuel consumption, so let's say it's about 1 hour, so let's say 100 gallons is what I expect. I'm thinking of still taking a full tank today. It's just because I don't know the Corsair that well yet. So I could take just 200 gallons would still be enough, but just to be 1000% sure today, I'm taking a full tank just for testing. Okay, that's our flight plan. And again, I'm just consulting these columns here during the flight, and I should be fine. Now let's get back to the cockpit and embark on this flight and see whether Welcome back to Orote Airfield. Now let's see if our navigation plan checks out. I'm going to start up the engine here, roll down the runway to the takeoff position. I might cut the video in between just to save some time in the taxiing process, for example, and you can skip forward in the video using the timeline. Yeah, if you find this just boring seeing me starting up the engine and taxiing, otherwise just follow me along and enjoy the flight. I'm keeping the comments sparse, but yeah, once in a while I might add a couple of things that I think might be interesting to you. If you have any questions about what I'm doing in the cockpit during the flight, just write your questions in the comments and I'll be quick to answer them. So enjoy the flight. Orote Air Control, this is Firefly 108, requesting permission to taxi to takeoff position on runway 11. Taxiing. Firefly 108 is taking the active runway 11. Now I'm setting the compass already for the first flight leg. First heading is 343 degrees. We have this nice navy compass here. 343 should be here. 4, what is it? 2468. You don't have to be super precise with the dead reckoning. It's surprising how robust the method is, even if you vary or have an error of a couple of degrees left or right. Trim looks good. Tail wheel locked. Flaps down 20. Flaps open. Radiators open halfway. Firefly 108 is taking off. is airborne. One upwind leg. Added time stamps to our mission. 8:25 is takeoff, and at 8:30 we are embarking on our first flight leg for 16 minutes. Now we are climbing to the east. You can see here our heading is eastish. Climbing 2,000 feet already. Goal here is to climb to 3,000 and turn around towards the airfield, and then climbing more to 6,000 feet before we start to push Nav 1 checkpoint. Temperatures and pressures, okay. Looks good so far. We are above 5,000 feet. I'm throttling back engine settings already for the cruise to see where the airspeed is settling in. 160 for now. I'll fly a bit faster. that. Land for 170 knots, and that's what we should set. Airfield is below. About 1 minute left before we start on our first flight leg. Okay, it is 8:30. Airbus Firefly 108 is pushing first checkpoint Nav 1. Okay, first flight leg has started. Setting heading on the compass here. It's around here. Now if you want, you can stop the stopwatch. I'm just looking at the timepiece here in the cockpit. And now comes the interesting part. Setting the right airspeed. You will see me checking this again all the time. Airspeed is a bit fast now, so I'm slowing down. Altitude is a bit high, so I want to decrease the altitude. I'm off course to the right, I'm correcting left. And this is what I'm now doing mostly during the flight. Trimming, keep the ball in the middle, the rudder trim, and elevator and aileron trim. I'm not touching the stick too much, just trying to fly by trimming the aircraft. Speed looks better now. Altitude starting decreasing. Don't have to do that too much now. Almost at 6,000 here. Of course, the heading is most important. I don't want to shoot past the target on the left or the right. The speed is important to arrive over the target at the right time, but of course the heading is important to arrive over the target. I don't even know what really to expect at nav point 2. Should be a ship of some kind, but could be anything. More minutes to target. Minutes to checkpoint 1 to nav 1. That's 5 minutes before, so always when I start looking for my target. There is something. Taking a screenshot here as evidence that I was here. So if you look at the compass, I'm a bit off to the right. Correct this, then I'm heading straight towards these two ships, so I guess this is our destination here, our checkpoint nav 1. And I'm still trying to stay on speed here, getting a bit fast. 70 as per the plan. Let's see when I actually cross over these, fly over these ships here. Always makes sense to fly a bit next to them, not directly over them. If you look at the clock here, we still have 2 to 3 minutes. And we have been a bit fast. It's not important to be over the target, like within 10 seconds of the flight plan. I mean, World War II, warbird navigation, dead reckoning navigation is not on the second, not as precise as they do it in modern planes, modern aviation, but still feels good if the flight plan checks out. Okay, now 1 to 2 minutes as per the flight plan. We're still a bit to go, so yeah, you have made it to nav point 1. Congratulations, notify command of what you see. 2 ships. Airburst, this is Firefly 108. I have reached nav 1, reporting 2 ships, 2 freighters it looks like. And I even did get a couple of flares. Okay, now it's 8:46. We're pushing the next waypoint. Should have done this before. Next heading is 211. Abors, Firefly 108, pushing nav 2. Okay, while I'm in the curve here, I set my compass. 2211. Verifying here, 211. Okay, already looking at the speed, the altitude. And we're on one heading. Guam should be to our left somewhere, yeah, over there. What's this? Oh. Somebody's under attack here. Okay, this threw me off my course here. Let's get back to the mission. Airbus Firefly 108 reporting aircraft, probably enemy aircraft under a fire by the Nav 1 ships at my position. Proceeding to next checkpoint. ETA is 900 sharp. Nav 2. Okay, check 6, obviously, if there's enemy aircraft in the area. Gun check. Speed 170, heading 211, altitude 6000. The message. Enemy aircraft attacked. Okay, now the engine and the aircraft is grooved in a bit, I think, flying more or less level, speed 170, heading more or less good, altitude is good, looking good. So good. Yeah, I'm systematically off to the left of my intended heading. So let's overcorrect a little bit. Compensate for that. Next checkpoint, 5 minutes out. There it is. There is a single ship. This should be my next waypoint. Again, I'm a bit off the heading to the right. I get back onto heading 211. My next checkpoint is directly in front of me right now. Almost. Screenshots. Speed is good. Almost 170. Don't need to climb more. Let's get a bit slower. Throttle back, but decreasing altitude to compensate. Okay, looks like our nav plan is checking out. For the nav practice, really, it's only the flight legs to nav 1 and this flight leg here that are really practice, because flying back to Guam is not very hard. You can already see it over there. ETA in 2 minutes. That looks good. Airbus, this is Firefly 108 approaching Checkpoint Nav 2 on schedule. One more minute as per the flight plan. There's the ship, so we are pretty much on time here. Very nice. Okay, next flight leg is 097470. Let's already set this. Made it to nav part 2. Congratulations. Verify command of what you see. Already have done that. Airbus Firefly 108 pushing checkpoint 3 Orote Airfield. Ooh, this looks nice. There's sub being refueled by the ship. Nice. Okay, checking altitude is good. And on heading. See the peninsula here, Orote. Okay, so but still I'm trying to just fly by the instruments, just for practice. Slow down a bit. Still a bit fast. ETA 917. One more thing, you can use the bottom status bar to verify, for example, your heading. Heading is now what, about 100 here. If you want to know it precisely, you can use the bottom status bar here in our external view. You can toggle this on or off. Here it says now indicated airspeed 1972, and our magnetic heading is 100 exactly. True heading 101, L 99 degrees. So this you can use to verify your headings. And yeah, also the airspeed, if you are unsure about this, use the status bar for this, should help you. About 10 minutes to target, to the airfield. Double check temperatures, pressures, fuel is good. Not to lose what we got here on during the last minutes. I'm acting lazy. Looks we're good. I'm just noticing that the clock is seemingly working a bit differently here. It says 10:12 or something, and in the F2 view here, if you look at the lower right corner, it also says 10:12. I have the overlay here. 10:12. Yeah, so it's 10:12. I haven't noticed it before that this clock is actually working differently. So, yeah, of course that makes my numbers here, the hours in my flight plan, incorrect, but the minutes are still good. The flight plan did in fact check out, but I have to add 1 hour here to everything, because I was not able to read the clock precisely. Lesson learned, I guess. Okay, Guam is coming up here. We are a bit slow on our approach. More minutes by the flight plan. And there's the airfield. Very nice. So flight leg 3 checked out too. Orote Airfield, Firefly 108 approaching the airfield from the west, requesting permission for overhead brake and landing full stop. I'm gonna stay on altitude and try to keep the speed to see if we actually arrive over the airfield at 10:70. It is 10:16 now. 1 more minute. This looks good. Junior 305, this is Firefly, radio check. Okay, it is 10:17 and we have arrived over the airfield. If you compare it to the flight plan, if you ignore the hour, the minutes are right. This is just because I was not reading the timepiece in the cockpit right. So 17 past full hour, we have arrived. Okay. Let's assume we got permission for the overhead brake. Let's set up the aircraft for landing. Junior 305, this is Firefly radio check.
Firefly was hearing 555 over, Tommy.
Just returning from the navigation flight recording content, so you are on the video. Yeah, I found all 2 nav points in the landing pattern here over Orote. What are you up to?
Currently conducting care qualifications. I'm just doing 8. I have to do 8 successful care passes with only 1 go around, and then I'll be care qualified. That's what I'm doing.
Sounds good. Landing gear down. Orote Airfield, Firefly 108 inbound for overhead brake over runway 11. 108 is over the numbers.
The 01 corner view.
Orote Air Control, 108 is a beam, gear, full stop landing.
Is on the radio. How are you? We're clear to land. Active runway.
On final. 108 has cleared the active. Okay, this is it. This is how you plan and fly a navigation mission in the DCS F4U-1D Corsair on this beautiful new Marianas WW2 map. I hope you enjoyed everything. And yeah, if you want to fly with us in the virtual Carrier Task Force 58, join our Discord, link is in the description. And if you have any questions or comments or critique, like my not using the timepiece in the cockpit in the right way, then post this in the comments below. Subscribe to the channel if you want to see more of such content here. Yeah, I enjoyed it very much today, and this is it. Firefly signing off.